but not a lot. So where I want to pick up with today, because we're going to finish this today. So if you haven't started Ptolemy's Gate, thank you. If you haven't started it yet, you're going to have some crash course reading to do over the next 2 days, because it is shorter than this one, but only by 60 pages. Okay, but hopefully you've started to see, by the time you get to the end of this book, you started to get a better idea of what Stroud is doing in the novels, and then that kind of picks up, I don't know, first third or so of the next book. And that's why I've got all the names up here. We're going to talk about these characters at various points, and I'm going to ask some questions about them. But where I want to pick up with today, I told you we were going to skip quite a bit from where we left off, is page 318 in the Golem's Eye. Not Thursday, sorry, Tuesday. Is page 318 and the footnotes. Okay? Because Bartimaeus includes some important information in the footnotes. Usually the footnotes are just meant for hilarity. Okay? These two aren't. The first footnote is about the Philosopher's Stone. Okay? And he says, a fabled pebble accredited with the ability to turn base metals into gold or silver. We talked about this the other day when the term alchemy was used. Okay? Its existence is, of course, utter moonshine, as might be discovered by asking any imp. We, jinn, can alter the appearance of things by casting a glamour or an illusion. But to permanently shift the true nature of something is quite impossible. Okay? What does he mean? To change the nature, the essence of something from one thing into another. For example, what is the nature, the essence of this container? The container, not what's in it. Okay? That's its appearance. It looks like plastic. It feels like plastic. If you were to bite into it, it would taste like plastic. What is its essence? What is plastic made of? Petroleum products. Okay? Oil, essentially. Okay? That's its essence. What can you not do, Bartimaeus is saying, to that essence? You can't change this essence into this. The appearance of this is a shirt, cloth. What is its essence? It's linen, okay, which is a type of fiber. Similarly, the appearance of this is paper, book, okay. What is its essence? What's paper made out of? Wood, okay. So, don't know the specific type, but odds are this is pine. Most paper products are made out of pine. They don't make them out of redwood. They don't make them out of oak, okay, because those are woods that are rather more expensive and are used for other purposes. So, he says, we can change the appearance of something. What do we see Bartimaeus continually doing throughout the novels? He takes on one form after another. Okay? You're going to see, when you get into Ptolemy's Gate, what form has he taken at the beginning? Before you answer that, what form does he often take in here? The form of the young Egyptian boy, Ptolemy. Okay? Beginning of the next book, he's going to take the form of a young girl with straight black hair. Kitty Jones. There's a reason why he takes her form, and there's a reason why he takes Ptolemy's form. Okay? So he says, humans never listen to something that doesn't suit them, and countless lives were expended on this futile search. Okay, so he's been talking about the essence of something or the nature of something. is the nature of Nathaniel, John Mandrake? Obviously human. Okay. But what do we mean when we talk about, oh, well, that's just human nature? We don't mean the physicality stuff. What do we mean? What they're like. Okay, let's go back to Korea for a moment. Kim Jong-un, crazy little fat guy, okay? What aspect of human nature does he exhibit when he saber rattles? Is it greed? Is it?
He's spoiled.
Okay, yes, there's definitely that involved. He is your quintessential spoiled little brat. He's gotten everything in life, and what has nobody ever told him? No.
Because they don't want to die.
Yeah, because you say no to him, and he puts you in front of a anti-aircraft gun and blows your body to the four corners of the world. Okay? Naked ambition? Yes. Is that an aspect of human nature? Are we by nature ambitious? Everybody in this room is ambitious. To degrees, yes. Some are more ambitious than others. Some of you go out of your way to really try to ace every quiz, every test. Some of you, what the hell, I'll just, scribble a few words and I'll take my D or D minus, as long as I'm through, kind of thing, okay? That's still some ambition. What would no ambition be? F you, Sherman. You're out of here. I don't care. No ambition would be not even getting out of bed in the morning, okay? Well, what other aspects of human nature? So, what kind of character does John have? I mean, that's what this nature idea is getting at. What motivates him more than anything else? What does he want out of the world? Success and recognition. What form do those take? That is, success and recognition mean what? What do those give him? One word. Power. It's power. Okay? What does Bartimaeus want more than anything in the world? To go back. Just let me go back to the other place where he's kind of an amorphous, not nothing because he still has sentience, but notice he doesn't have a shape there. He's completely free until he's bound by some. So, what is it? It's freedom. What about Kitty? Does she want power? Does she want revenge? Does she want to kill all the magicians?
She wants freedom, like a different
Okay, justice. Yeah, she does want freedom. It is obviously different than Bartimaeus'. What kind of freedom does she want? Is it equality with magicians? Does she want to be able to practice magic like they do?
She just wants like the same opportunity, like the same shot as them.
Okay. Or does she want them to leave them alone? Why do the commoners exist, according to magicians?
To serve them.
So they're slaves. Why do demons exist, according to magicians? Because they're slaves. Okay? We'll leave Pennyfeather aside from them. We'll leave all of these folks aside and come to them in a bit. All right? Can human nature change? Can Kim Jong-un? Can. Is it possible? Realm of possibility. Could he have let's use a biblical metaphor, a Saul of Tarsus, Damascus Road experience? He's on his way to nuke the United States. And Jesus speaks to him and says, Kim, my son, why do you persecute me? And he says, who are you, Lord? I'm Donald of the Trump, Why? I know, I'm sorry. I'm inviting divine retribution here, okay? Could he have a change of heart? Yes, he could. Yes, he could. Okay? So, human nature, what we kind of consider human nature, that can change. How have we seen Nathaniel, from the opening of the first book, change to, because Bartimaeus says he does, change to John by the end of this book? He says, when Nathaniel releases him, he says, notice I called you John there. I didn't call you Nathaniel. He said, yes, I did notice it. I'm glad you noticed that after eating. Bartimaeus was like, you didn't get the point there. I wasn't praising you. Why not? When he used that word alchemy about Nathaniel, what did he mean? Is Nathaniel, think of that great chain of being I had written up over here the other day. Is Nathaniel rising in Bartimaeus' estimation? Or is he falling? Is he becoming something more, something better, something greater? Or is he becoming something less? Is he devolving rather than evolving? Bartimaeus' opinion is this. Why? What is he becoming more like?
Like other musicians.
You can just tick them all off. He's becoming like all the other magicians. So what is he losing? His humanity? His morality. A word that doesn't show up much in the beginning of the first book, but it's used every now and then it starts to get used more here. Okay? There's this idea of morality that is common to humanity. Doesn't mean we all have the same morality. What it means is we all have an idea of morality. C.S. Lewis put it this way. We all have an idea of fairness. Fairness. Now, Grayson's idea of what's fair might be different than mine. Grayson's idea of what's fair might be, hey, I wrote the paper. What's fair is it gets an A. My idea of white might be a little bit different than that. Grayson's idea of fairness might be different from Devon's. Devon's idea of fairness might be, hey, I'm going to cut up to the front of this line because I want to and I deserve to. Okay? But they're both operating from this idea of fairness. That is, they're both operating within the same realm. It's not like one just says, screw your fairness. There is no such thing as fairness. Like some philosophers said. Nietzsche, for example, said, F fairness. It's all about me and my will to power. If I can take it, it's mine. If I want it, it's mine. If you don't like it, get out of my way. Okay? Doesn't that kind of describe the magicians? What are they constantly doing? Throughout both two books we've read so far. Do they ever look out for each other?
They're all throwing each other under the bus.
Yeah, throwing each other under the bus, plotting against each other, conspiring against each other. Okay? So the second footnote. Good Lord, I did not mean to spend that long on 5 lines. Where he's talking about the different kinds of magicians and such, and he goes through the bottom of page 318, talking about the magicians who had lived on Golden Lane. It was to those of us spirits who watched the process a deeply moral tale. What's he talking about? Nope. Wrong room. A deeply moral tale. Our captors had been caught in the prison of their own ambitions. Okay? What's he saying? our captors, the magicians who entrap us. He says what? They're blind to their own situation. They are entrapping themselves. How? Their ambitions that are getting the best of them. They're enslaving themselves, in other words, he says. Okay? Who points this out? The demon. Why do you think Stroud uses the word demon to describe them? Or he puts in the mouth of magicians the word demon. Notice, what do they not like being called? They don't like being called demons. They want to be called what they actually are. Imps, foliots, jinnies, afrits, mirrors. That is, those are what we are. Kind of the, whatever these things are, call themselves. Okay? Let's go on. So Nathaniel's in Prague. Why is he there again? Why has Whitwell sent him to Prague?
To research stuff about Golem.
To research about the golems. Because that's the last place they've been seen. All right? Let's skip that line, that passage. So they meet up with Harlequin. He tells them to meet him again. Okay? And so we skip a bunch. And we see we see Harlequin get killed. Nathaniel goes off to the meeting with Kafka. And we're going to leave that for a moment. And we're going to pick up with Kitty. Chapter 31, page 355. Okay. Kitty and the resistance are doing what? Robbing Gladstone's tomb. Okay, which is in Westminster Abbey. Notice, it takes them a little while to get the lid off of the sarcophagus. And while, we're told, page 355, while the sarcophagus was being despoiled. What does that mean, despoiled? What does the resistance become at this point?
Grave robbers.
They're grave robbers. That's it. Okay? Kitty, meanwhile, is sitting back thinking what? She's looking back at the fake wall that she discovered and the 6 bodies inside there. She's got anxiety rising. Never had her ideals, her desire to see the magicians vanquished and power returned to the commoners, seemed so divorced from the reality of Mr. Pennyfeather's group. In other words, she's thinking, what the hell are we doing? How is this going to help commoners? And what a grotesque reality it was. The naked greed of her companions, their excited cries, Mr. Pennyfeather's red, glistening face, the soft clinking of the valuables as they disappear into the outstretched bags. All of it seemed suddenly repugnant to her. And she suddenly realizes, we're just thieves and grave robbers. And she's one of them. Notice, how does that begin? Never had her ideals. Right? How do our ideals govern our actions? Or how should our ideals govern our actions? Right? She has these lofty ideas. I want to see magicians lose power. I want to see power return to commoners. Does she know anything about what life was like when commoners had power before? Well, she gets the very skewed, twisted view of history from her schooling. Bartimaeus is going to give her her own schooling. Because she's going to learn from him what? About resilience. Happens with every empire. Gradually, commoners become resilient to magic. And they do what? Might take hundreds of years, as he will say it took with Rome. Rome, it took 500 years before commoners ultimately did what? between the commoners and the barbarians, the Goths at the north, overthrew Roman rule. Then what happened to magicians? They scattered. And what did you have? You had the Dark Ages and the Middle Ages and the Renaissance. And only then, in the 17th century, do magicians gradually start coming back into power. Okay? She doesn't know any of that history, though. Her ideals are simply, just let us determine our own fates. Us commoners. Let us rule ourselves. Okay? So, what happens when Stanley falls inside the crypt? Falls inside the sarcophagus? Well, he dies, but he somehow, because it doesn't happen before then, he somehow triggers the waking, I guess, of the Afrit Honorius. Okay? And we see Gladstone's bones come out. Grave clothes and everything on them. The death mask is on his face. And we see the resistance gradually all killed except for two. Who are the two who live? Kitty and Nick. Why does Nick live? Because he's the first one out of there. Okay? Pennyfeather dies. Stanley, we're not even told. I guess Stanley's body is found inside the sarcophagus by the night police later on. Ian dies. What saves Kitty? The little silver pendant that Mrs. Hearneck, old Mrs. Grandma Hearneck, gave her. Okay? So we pick up with part 4. Nathaniel makes his way back from Prague. What has he discovered in Prague? How was the journey to Prague successful?
We found out that the mercenary didn't hire someone in the government.
Okay, the big burly mercenary wasn't only working for Lovelace. In fact, what does he say about Lovelace? He says he was essentially a stooge. He says, I'm working for somebody else. Okay? Nathaniel's like, who? But he never gets that out of him. What else does he learn? The Golem obviously is then controlled by somebody in the government. He meets Kafka. Notice the little pun there, like Kafka. Okay? It's where Kafka is from, by the way. Went by his house when I was there over Christmas. And Kafka was working on what? A second manuscript for another Golem. Okay? But he dies before the manuscript can be completed. So, Nathaniel learns, 1, the Golem is definitely controlled by somebody in the government. 2, the mercenary is working for this person in the government. But what kind of evidence does he bring back with him? Nothing. So he can't use any of that. So he gets home and he discovers all hell essentially has been breaking loose because there's been a big attack. Okay? So Nathaniel's wondering, because of the fact the conversation he had with the mercenary knew he was coming, he's wondering, who else in the government knew I was going? Well, Whitwell obviously knew. Julius Tallow obviously knew. Who was it? Mortensen, Secretary of the Foreign Office, knew. Okay? And he remembers the girl. She put the glamour on me. Did I say something? But he's not sure that he did. So he arrives at Westminster Abbey and sees what has happened. And Ms. Whitwell tells him, page 379, when he tells her his story, she says, then everything you've discovered is no good to me, and neither are you. London is in an uproar, Mandrake, and a scapegoat needs to be found. I intend to distance myself from you, and if Mr. Tallow has any sense, he will do the same. In other words, what life lesson has Nathaniel just learned. I'm not saying this is necessarily a good life lesson to adopt or accept. But what life lesson has he learned from Ms. Whitwell? Okay, possibly nobody's going to hold your hand. What else?
He's on his own.
Don't trust anyone. Okay? Some would say that's a lesson to be learned. Don't trust anybody. Is there anybody Nathaniel should trust? Can he trust Bartimaeus? According to his thinking, no, he's a demon. He always wants to, harm me. Does Bartimaeus always want to harm Nathaniel? Not always. Does he? In the first book, yeah, for the most part. Okay. Kitty? Should he trust her? She wants the downfall of magicians. Okay. The question on the quiz. Why does Kitty save him? That's a pretty important question. She could be miles away by the time she saves him with Jacob Earneck, but she saves him. She stops the golem. Why? Who's the golem been hurting for the most part? Commoners? No, magicians and demons. It's kind of like, go for it, man. Just wipe them all out. Okay? So, Nathaniel interrupts the conversation that's going on. Page 381, he says, whoa. We're talking about Gladstone's staff, right? His staff of office? And they're like, yes. Okay. And he's like, why didn't we ever use it? Well, it's too powerful, unless you're a Gladstone. Okay? So, Nathaniel goes off, page 384 and 85. He goes off to the Resistance's kind of headquarters. He goes off to Penny Feather's art supply store. And he goes through the names of employees. Ann Stevens, Kathleen Jones, Nicholas Drew, Stanley Hake, and Frederick Weaver. And he thinks, Stan, or Stanley, Fred. I know those two names, but there's no Kitty. And he keeps going through, Ann Stevens, Kitty Jones, Nicholas Drew. Kitty, nickname for Kathleen. So now he has a name. Okay? And we go back to Bartimaeus. What do we see in the next chapter? There's this big mass summoning going on. I think it is something like 40 magicians. They're bringing up 40 jinnies and afrits and freets and such. Okay? And what do we see? I'm not going to talk about it, but just skip it a bit. We see Julius Tallow attempt to raise a jinni, and what happens to him? And why?
Because he misread, he read correctly the wrong Jacob's family's bookshop.
Yeah, he read what the Earneck family dutifully printed for him. Okay? They didn't know that he would ever use that spell. It was just, a hope. As we said before, as they actually say, they're playing the long game. If we can cause his death, that's fine. Okay? So Bartimaeus and all these others have to go out and find Honorius, the rogue Efreet, the crazy, insane Efreet, okay, who's now jumping around the spires and towers and rooftops of London. Okay? So Bartimaeus, while he's on a rooftop waiting for Honorius to show up, he just kind of sits there and starts to put two and two together. Notice Nathaniel doesn't do this. Could it be coincidence? Top of 396. First, Golem was causing trouble instigator unknown. Second, resistance had broken into a high security tube and made off with a valuable item. Third, as a direct result of the second, an unbalanced efreet loose, causing additional mayhem. All this was having a result. I'd tasted the fear and confusion among the magicians during the general summoning. Could it be coincidence? In other words, what's the result of all of these things? The magical community is in an uproar. What happens whenever a community is in an uproar? What does the larger community always want? Richard Nixon ran on a platform in 1968, of law and order. Why? What characterized the last few years of the 1960s? Mass protests. Okay? Against primarily the Vietnam War, but also against other things. All right? So Nixon ran on law and order. What's the magical community looking for? What does Sholto Penn want? He wants justice. He wants law and order because he wants to be able to open his shop and sell his goods again. What's happened to the British Museum, the National Gallery, Westminster Abbey? It's been desecrated. We've got to bring order back to a chaotic situation. Okay? So, whatever's causing all this is creating turmoil. What could happen to a leader in a time of great turmoil? We just saw it. Last year's election. What was it all about? It wasn't about Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. What was it all about? We need something different. We've tried this. We've been trying this for years and years and years. Okay? This being whatever's been going on, and I don't mean just for the Obama administration. I think what Trump appealed to in his electorate was not just anti-Democrat. It was anti-incumbent. It was we, the United States, has been doing the same thing whether you elect Republicans or Democrats. Because you have to admit, Trump isn't really a Republican. He's what? He's a Trumpican. He is a Trump. He's all about Trump. He's merely putting on a Republican's coat. Why? Because you couldn't win as a third party. The third party doesn't have a chance. Period. Okay? That's why Bernie Sanders ran as what? A Democrat. He's not a Democrat. He has never been a Democrat. Okay? He is a Democrat socialist. But he doesn't register as part of the Democratic Party. So you had two outsiders and then the quintessential insider, Hillary Clinton. Okay? And the only reason Clinton won is because she rigged the DNC against Bernie Sanders. I would have loved to see Trump and Sanders go toe-to-toe, man. Why? Because Trump really believed what he said, and Sanders really believed what he said. At least he was an honest, socialist. Okay? So, he goes on, it didn't seem plausible to me that a bunch of commoners could have gained access to Gladstone's tomb all on their own lonesome. Look at the kind of jobs they pull off before this. And what are they essentially doing? Breaking into a magician's home and stealing their trinkets. Okay? I guess instead someone must have put them up to it, given them a few tips. Well, who's the someone? Mr. Hopkins. And then what do we find out when we get to the end of the novel? Who else was Mr. Hopkins talking to other than Mr. Pennyfeather? Henry Duval. Okay? And by the way, so we have Hopkins, and in both cases, there's somebody related to Hopkins, right? The mystery man The one that Kitty meets where? In the theater? Is that a clue? Maybe it should be. I guess instead someone must have put them up to it, giving them a few tips. Now, either that very helpful person didn't know about the guardian of the tomb, or maybe he or she did. Either way, I doubted very much that the girl Kitty and her friends had much idea what they were going up against. Still, she'd survived. And now, while the magicians tied themselves in knots trying to catch up with Gladstone's roving skeleton, the dreaded staff was at large in the world. And he gives us a long footnote about why the staff is so dreaded. Someone was going to take advantage of this. I didn't think it would be the girl. She's a commoner. Is she going to be able to utilize the power of the staff? No. I recalled the unknown intelligence that I'd sensed watching me through the golem's eye as the creature tried to kill me at the museum. It was possible, if you looked at the whole thing dispassionately, to imagine a similar shadowy presence behind the Abbey job too. The same one? Well, who was the one looking through the golem's eye? That was Duval. Is that the shadowy intelligence? No, because there's somebody behind Duval manning the marionette strings. Why did Duval listen to this other person? What did Duval stand to win? What do you think he's going to get out of this? More power. What kind of more power? What did, what's his name? The crazy, tyrannical communist leader of Venezuela who's literally killing his people through starvation. Maduro. What did he do? He seized all power. People are literally starving on the streets. Okay? And if they bake their own bread, they get shot. If they can find the materials to bake their own bread. Okay? He was going to declare martial law and make himself prime minister. As I waited, engaged in lots of clever speculations such as this, there were plenty more incredibly intelligent thoughts, which I won't bother troubling your pretty little heads with. Take it from me, it was all good, damn good. You know. He scans the plains and he sees Honorius in a moment and has a nice little conversation with him, learns a little bit from him. What does he learn? Kitty escaped. Okay? And that Honorius knows her name. Okay? So, Bartimaeus takes care of Honorius, drops him in the water. Page 409, he says, Honorius, this is your last chance. We understand the stresses you've been under. If you can't dematerialize voluntarily from those bones, doubtless one of today's magicians can free you from your binding instead. What kind of power do today's magicians have compared with Gladstone? You know Rupert Devereux doesn't have any. All he has is the power of his office. Right? Who, of all of these, and this one, who's the most powerful, do you really think? Probably Whitwell. And then either Duval or Nathaniel. Okay? I mean, Nathaniel's, the kid is really talented, if you haven't put that together yet. So, he says, surrender now, I will ask my master to research the necessary spell. Honorius, ask your master, will it really be so easy? Are you on such equal terms? I doubt it very much. All of you are subject to the whims of human masters, and I alone am free. Notice he's free, but he's also what? Bound to Gladstone's bones. He's free in that he doesn't have a master telling him what to do. He can go do whatever he wants, but he can't free himself of the bones and go back to the other place. You're trapped in a festering bag of bones. Look at that. I'm in a better state than you. How many years have you been working for them? Change shape all you like. The fact remains, you're a slave, with threats and manacles binding you to your task. Oh, look, now I'm an imp. Now I'm a devil. Who cares? Big deal. gargoyle, actually. But his point had hit home. So they drop him in the Thames and think he's dead. Fortunately, he's not dead. Okay? So we go back to Kitty, page 414. We find out for 3 years her energies and emotions that helped to build the resistance. Now, all gone. There is no resistance. Resistance implies what? You're building a force that's going to topple a government. I mean, the French resistance fought with the Allies behind enemy lines to harass the Nazis at every opportunity they could. How many members are there ultimately of the resistance? She's going to tell Bartimaeus a specific number, 11. He's like, 11%? That's a good beginning. She goes, no. 11. Like, what kind of, how are you going to topple the government? Her companions had gone, and with them the ideals they shared. But what were these ideals? That is, did the members of the resistance have Kitty's ideals? She says the events in the Abbey had not only changed her future, they transformed her sense of the past too. The futility of the whole affair now seemed transparent. The futility and the foolishness. Now she thinks of Mr. Pennyfeather, and she doesn't think of him as a principled leader, but rather a grinning thief, red-faced and sweating in the lantern light. What had they ever expected to achieve? What would the artifacts have truly accomplished? The magicians would not have been toppled, even with a crystal ball. No, they'd been kidding themselves all along. The resistance was nothing but a flea biting the ears of a mastiff. A mere annoyance. But she pulls the silver pendant from her pocket and she thinks, this is what saved her. Nothing more, nothing less. It was the purest luck she had survived it all. Was it? Why did Grandma Hearneck give that to her? Just in case. A single demon had attacked and their resilience had come to nothing. All the group's brave words, all Mr. Hopkins' clever counsel, all Fred's boasting, all Nick's earnest rhetoric, worthless. And then she thinks of Nick. The demon said it had killed 10 out of 12, so Nick's alive. Then there was the clever Mr. Hopkins. Where had he been all this time? She's thinking, why wasn't he involved in the raid? Neither he nor the mystery benefactor, the gentleman whose information about Gladstone's defenses had proved so sadly lacking, had dared to be present at the tomb. And what is it the mysterious benefactor wanted from the tomb? 2 things with no magical power, he says. He just wants it for his collection. The cloak and the staff. Okay? And we find out they're both full of magical power. Okay? Staff lay beside her amid the debris on the floor. She picks it up and does wham! It hurts her leg. Turns out to be harder than she thought. Okay? So she puts it in the cellar closet. And she goes to one place she thinks she might still be welcome. Mom and Dad's house. And there's John Mandrake. Sitting all prettified, tight pants and everything. Page 419. So this was the Mandrake whose servants had pursued the resistance for so many months. She would have known his profession a mile off. His clothes were the giveaway. Long black coat, like an undertaker's coat. Okay? Ridiculously tight black suit, shiny patent leather shoe, outsized red handkerchief, rose up from his breast pocket, hair long about his face, which was thin and pale. She realizes he's young, possibly younger than her. Okay? And notice how she speaks to him. What do you want, Mr. Mandrake? Mr. Why afford him the title? Why afford him the courtesy? Why not? What do you want, you lousy piece of... Okay? So they talk for a bit. He arrests her. He tells her the charges. And notice what she does. She takes charge by charge and says, nope, 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 nope. Where's your evidence? Where's your evidence? Okay. He talks about the trial against Julius Tallow. She says, when he says, me, you beat me up, you took my scrying glass, page 423. She says, I remember you now, and your glass. That was a shoddy piece of work. I made that. We couldn't even get it to start. And he says, you stopped denying the charges. She says, yeah. Oh, yeah, okay, you're right. They're all true, all except for one. What was one of his last charges? You left me for dead in that alleyway. She says, no, wait. You said I left you for dead. That isn't so. Fred would have cut your throat, but I spared you. Heaven knows why, you miserable little sneak. I should have done the world a favor. And yet when she has the opportunity, less than 200 pages later, she doesn't take it. Okay? I despise you and all the other magicians. You care nothing for people like us. We're just here to provide your food, clean your houses, make your clothes. We slave away in your factories, workshops, while you and your demons live in luxury. If we cross your paths, we suffer. Like Jacob did. You're all callous and wicked and heartless and vain. Callous, wicked, heartless, and vain. Vain? As he tilts his handkerchief. He's all about appearances. He says, I'm just well turned out. Presentation's important. Nothing's important to you. Get off, Mom. You want a tip on presentation? Trousers are far too tight. Okay. So, Kitty's father says some stuff. She tells him he's an idiot, because he is. What does she finally do? She beats up Mandrake. Okay. Page 425. She launched herself forward, swung a fist, caught the boy in the cheekbone with a dull crack. He capsized, sprawling into the chair. She steps over her prone mother, makes for the door. Her father grabs her. She says, leave off. Okay. And when Mandrake comes to, he says, the girl, secure her, don't let her go. You may grasp her hair as painfully as you wish. Kitty, is that the best you can do? Because he's called forth a Mueller. She takes the thing and kills it. Okay. The imp capered with triumph, stopped mid-caper. Kitty was straightening up, dusting off her smoldering jacket, staring at the magician with a grim smile. She drew her throwing disc from her jacket, flourished it at the magician, and says, you can wear the tightest trousers you please, Mr. Mandrake, but the fact remains you're a conceited small-timer. If you follow me, I'll kill you. And leaves. Okay? Promises her parents, you'll never see me again. And Nathaniel thinks about this. He's right to visit her parents, but he's also thinking, I am totally screwed. If word arrives back at Parliament or at the ministry, what I've done and that I don't have her in hand. Page 429, he muttered a curse, conceited small-timer. It was hard not to admire the girl's strength of character. What does he mean, strength of character? By the way, it's the exact same phrase. A character in the Harry Potter novels says you need to have in order to throw off certain curses. It's the particular character trait that Harry has in spades, more than anybody else. And it's born out of one thing. What builds character? Trial, adversity, suffering. Okay? People who have everything in life generally don't have character per se. Why? Because they've not had to struggle. If they've been given everything in life. Kim Jong-un has a poor character. Bashar al-Assad has a poor character. Why? He didn't have to earn anything. He hadn't told Whitwell or anybody else about his researches. He'd gone off on his own. Why? Page 429. He'd wanted this success for himself and himself alone. Retrieving the staff would have enhanced the status immeasurably. The prime minister would have lauded him to the skies. He would perhaps have been promoted. So, he asks Bartimaeus, what have you done? Have you been successful in going after the Ifrit? And Bartimaeus quotes Caesar, page 429. Weeny, weedy, weechy, and all that. I came, I saw, I conquered. Okay? That's what the three Latin words mean. Right? So, Bartimaeus also tells him Kitty Jones is the one who nicked the staff and still has it. And then he notices Nathaniel has a bruise on his cheek. He says, you've been fighting. No, I haven't. Not important. Scrapping like a street kid. Come on, was it over a girl? Matter of honor? Notice Bartimaeus is being entirely sarcastic there. Because he knows Nathaniel has no honor. Okay? Quentin Makepeace shows up when Nathaniel gets back to his office and has a lot to say. I'm going to skip a bunch. Talks about Gladstone's staff. Mentions a contact he has with the undesirable part of London. It says, maybe this undesirable person can give us information about Kitty Jones. Okay? Now, what role does Quentin Makepeace play? What have we seen him as so far? What does he do for a living? He's a playwright. What kind of plays does he write? Really bad ones. That do nothing but what? Celebrate magicians. They're all full of romantic drivel, okay? As we saw the Swan of Araby opening at the beginning. So, yeah, oh yeah. Page 439. Bartimaeus is out doing his searching. And we're told at the top of the page, well, at the bottom of 438, okay, he's out to find Kitty. And he says, if a magician binds you to a task, you do it, and quickly, or suffer the shriveling fire. With that kind of injunction hanging over your head, you soon learn to discard any scruples. This means that during the 5,000 years I'd been back and forth across the earth, I'd been unwillingly involved in a good many shabby enterprises. Not that I have a conscience, of course, but even we hardened gins sometimes feel a little soiled by the things we're called upon to do. What does he mean when he says, not that I have, and have is italicized, a conscience, of course? Does Bartimaeus have a conscience? Yes, he does. How do you know? He doesn't like doing a lot of the stuff he does. You couldn't not have a conscience and not... All right, I'm messing that all up. You have to have a conscience to have that kind of regret. Okay? That's what I'm trying to say. If you didn't have a conscience, you wouldn't care at all. He does care. That's the problem. I shook my beak in mild despondency. Nathaniel. What was there to say? Despite our occasional differences, I'd once hoped that he might turn out slightly different from the normal run of magicians. That's an indication he has a conscience. He wants the kid to do what? To be better than the rest. He'd shown a lot of initiative in the past, for instance, and more than a crumb of altruism. It had been barely possible that he might follow his own path through life. Notice, might follow his own path. Does the path choose the walker, or does the walker choose the path? What's he saying? Whose path is Nathaniel following? The same wide, well-trod path that all other magicians have trod, which is the path to what? Power and ambition. He's merely joining the throng and not, okay? He says, it had been barely possible he might follow his own path through life and not just go down the old power, wealth, notoriety road that every one of his fellows chose. But had he? Nope. The signs were now worse than ever. The signs that Nathaniel is following the same path. Perhaps still unsettled by witnessing the demise of his colleague Tallow, my master had been curt to the point of rudeness when he summoned me that morning. He was at his palest and most taciturn. No friendly conversation, no tactful pleasantries. I received no further praise for my dispatch of the renegade Efreet the night before, despite changing into a few beguiling female shapes. Didn't get a single rise out of him. Yeah, he probably means that both figuratively and literally. What I did get was a prompt new task. A nasty one. All right? But a charge is a charge. So here I was, hour or two later, loitering in a bush in Golem. What's his job? Kidnap Jacob Hirnick. Why? To have him be the bait to capture Kitty. Notice, he doesn't want to do this. Okay? So, Bartimaeus explains to Jacob, oh, by the way, that tallow guy, he's dead. I saw him. He got eaten. And Jacob's like, yes, there is justice. He's fine with being taken then. He's thinking, whatever happens to me now, that's fine. Okay? So, Kitty goes off and meets with Mr. Hopkins. And how does that little meeting go? What does she discover from meeting with him about him? How concerned is he really for the resistance? Not at all. What does he want? You didn't get away with even the staff? Are you sure? Well, maybe Nick got it. Not me, dropped my bag. Well, it's a good thing you're okay, but she learns he's really just as bad as what? The magicians. It's all about him. It's all about his wants, his needs, his desires. Okay? So, she leaves from there, and she goes and she gets her bag, and she loads it up from Pennyfeather's secret stash of stuff that they've robbed. She goes off to the building that Jacob's at, and she gets surrounded by a bunch of the graybacks. And notice, these are literal werewolves. They're not just secret police. They're secret police who transform, as we're going to see Henry Duval also is at the end of the novel. Okay? And we see her take on some of the graybacks. And Nathaniel orders Bartimaeus to rescue her. Okay? So he does. Takes her to the library. I'm skipping a whole bunch. Pages 483 and following. He points out, that she tried to rob him before. She realizes or recognizes him, so to speak. And he said, why did you want the amulet? She goes, it was magical. I didn't know what it was. It was just magical, and we were stealing magical things. Okay? In pages 484 and 85, they keep talking, and she talks to him like he is a source of wickedness. Why? What does she think about demons? The Exorcist. She thinks demons, spawn of Satan kind of demons. Is that what these are? Does Stroud ever say, ever hint that these creatures are, quote unquote, fallen angelic beings? No, he doesn't. Not at all. Okay? In the Middle Ages, there were thought to be creatures like this, jinni, that were not fallen angelic beings. They were kind of a middle thing between angelic beings and demons. Spirits of the air, as they were sometimes referred to, of varying levels of power and authority. But they were kind of tied to earth. Notice here, Stroud makes them a little bit different. So, she says, page 484, when Bartimaeus says, "You punched your mandrake, did you?" She says, "Yes, you seem amused." "Oh, can you tell? Odd, given that you and he are aligned in wickedness, given that you carry out," he says, "aligned in wickedness? You know, there's a servant-slave thing going on here. I don't have any choice." She goes, "Oh, just obeying orders, right?" He says, "Yeah, when to disobey means certain destruction, you try the shriveling fire. See if you like it. Sounds a pretty ropey excuse to me. In other words, oh, no, I didn't want to throw all these Jews in the ovens. Just following orders. You're saying all your evil is performed unwillingly?" Well, I wouldn't quite put it like that. But yeah, from imp to Ifrit, we're all bound to the magician's will. We can't do anything about it. They have us over a barrel. Pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. And indeed, as I heard myself say all this, yeah, it seemed that way to me too. We slaves have dwelled so long in these chains of ours, we rarely speak of them. Why? Because speaking of them even makes them worse. Because Bartimaeus is what? He is a being of extraordinary power. And he's bound to the whims of a 14-year-old. He says, "Oh, we fight back if we can. If we can misinterpret, we can't, we will." Why? Because they're evil? I don't think so. Why will they misinterpret if they can?
Trying to get loose.
To try to get away. What do the jinni want? Freedom. Okay? Notice the only group, really, in all the novels that doesn't want freedom is whom? The magicians. Commoners want freedom. The jinni want freedom. They're both essentially slaves. The magicians want power over each other and everyone else, which is why you have them constantly trying to knife each other in the back. Okay? So they continue talking. And page 487, Bartimaeus says, "Oh, by the way, if it's any consolation, I destroyed the demon from the crypt. That is, I killed the demon that killed all your friends." Okay? Notice he says, if it's a consolation. What does he mean? What's a consolation supposed to do? If it makes you feel any better. He's trying to make her feel better. Conscience? Okay? So he goes on and explains on pages 489 and following about how people have overthrown magicians' rule in the past. That commoners develop resiliency and they rise above them. Okay? And they keep talking. In page 492, he asked her, "Why did you come looking for Jacob here next? You knew it was a trap." He said you hadn't seen him for years. She says, "I hadn't, but it's my fault he's in this mess, isn't it?" What is she showing there? Ambition? Self-preservation? No. What kind of action is that on her part? Think Terran. What is he after? And it's honorable. It's humble. In fact, it is an act of humility. Because what is she doing? She's putting Jacob's safety and welfare over her own. Right? That's why Bartimaeus is like, I don't understand. What are you doing? You're not trying to save your own hide. He says, I just think it's odd. Well, what can you know about it, demon? You're a monster. How dare you even imagine what I'm feeling? He's like, Missy, let me give you a friendly tip. You wouldn't want to be called female mud spawn, would you? What does he mean by mud spawn? Why does he call her mud spawn? And the Lord took dust of the ground and formed it into clay, and formed a man of the clay, and gave the breath of life to it. Golem, anybody? What's the difference between a golem and a human being? Well, a human being, according to the Judeo-Christian creation myth, is created by God. The golem is created by a magician. Okay? It's an imperfect replica. He says mud spawn because you're nothing but dirt. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Okay? He says, I at least am not made of dust. Well, in a similar way, when addressing a spirit such as me, the word demon is, in all honesty, a little demeaning. We like the term jinny. Though you can add adjectives, noble, resplendent, glorious and such. No one's friendly with a demon. No, not normally. Cognitive differentials are too great. And yet, what form does he always take? Or almost always? Ptolemy's. But it has happened. Yeah, take it from me. When? Oh, long ago. Doesn't matter. Notice, the Egyptian boy shrugged. What's Stroud telling us? It's possible to bridge the divide between jinny and human. Bartimaeus, in fact, told us in the first book, he what? Ptolemy. He loved him. Okay? Loved him. You're making it up. So why did Mandrake save me from the wolves? It doesn't make sense. Well, he wants the staff. Is that the reason? Yes, it is. It is. Okay? Why? Power. You mean that staff's important? It's like, good Lord, girl, you don't know anything. Okay? Oh, you didn't know? You were set up. Who? Hopkins? Yeah, and somebody else. Okay? So they keep talking, page 494. And talking about the golem, Kitty. Well, if it's so easy, why haven't the magicians stopped it? Because it would require personal bravery. They never do anything themselves. They rely on us the whole time. Mandrake gives me an order, I obey. He sits at home, I go out and suffer. That's the way it works. Sounds tough. What has Kitty just shown? Pity. Pity. She is empathizing with him. Yeah. It's the way it works. In other words, it's life. No choice. That's why I'm interested in you coming out to rescue Hairneck. He's saying, what? I don't have a choice. I do what Mandrake commands. You had a choice. You.
What kind of businesses are you looking for?
Sure. You had a choice. You did what? You put yourself in danger for him. He says, let's face it, it was a stupid decision. Right? On one level, very stupid. What is one of humanity's One of our instinctual behaviors. What's one of the things we know something is alive, other than reproduction and eating? Self-preservation. It attempts to preserve its life. Okay? It was a stupid decision. You didn't have to make it. No one's forcing you to do anything. You got it wrong, but for admirable reasons. Did she get it wrong? Believe me, it makes a change to see that after hanging around with magicians for so long. He's kind of going, girl, you got moxie. I like you. I'd like to hang around with you more often. Because the magicians, they just kind of rub off on you. They're all icky. I didn't get it wrong. How long has it been? Now, is she asking, how long has it been? How long has it been since we got here? Or is she asking, how long have you been serving magicians? Because Bartimaeus takes it to be the second question. I think she's asking the first question. Like, shouldn't he have been here by now? 5,000 years or more off and on. You get the odd break down the centuries. She says, and Britain will fall too in time. He goes, yep, cracks are already showing. He says, I've enjoyed our conversation. I hope they don't order me to kill you. Conscience again. Okay? 10 minutes left. We're going to go through quickly. So, Nathaniel gets hauled off because he gets captured by Jane Farrar in the night police. He gets hauled off to the council. And Henry Duval wants to send him right off to the Tower of London and start playing with them. Okay? And Devereaux says, no, we got to let the boy speak. It's, according to the law. And what does Nathaniel say? He says, if these goons here hadn't caught me, I would have had Kitty Jones and the staff. And we still can make this thing work if I show up where my slave has her. And Devereaux's like, okay, we'll let him try. We'll send some vigilant spheres. That is, we'll watch him. Okay, so what does Nathaniel know? And also, what does he promise? Devereaux says, so what will become of the girl and the boy? Nathaniel goes, oh, well, you can question them all you want. Kill him then. So now he's committed to that course of action. So he can't arrive at Kitty and say, oh, no. What does he do? He makes promises. He says, oh, we'll let you go. I'll help you escape. No problem. Page 508. No one knows we're here. We're alone. And Bartimaeus is like, no, it's not. You're vigilant spheres. He's lying to you. She asks, what surety do I have that you will keep your word? He smiles. None. You'll have to trust me. Hardly likely. Okay? So, she wishes to talk to Jacob. Why can't Jacob speak freely? He's got a foliot wrapped around him, clenching his mouth, making him smile, and then he just releases the pressure enough to let Jacob speak. What clue does Jacob give to her that they're not going to be freed? Because he gives her a clue. Page 511. I am going to accept Mr. Mandrake's offer. Do you have anything to say? No, Kathleen. You can trust him. He calls her Kathleen. We're the only ones who call her Kathleen. Her parents. Every other place we see interaction between Jacob and Kitty, it's Kitty. Okay? She hesitated, nodded, turned away. In other words, I got you. Understood. Okay? So they go off to the staff. Notice Bartimaeus, form of a guinea pig, page 512, seated at her feet in the car. Doesn't really like what's going on. The guinea pig nodded regretfully to itself. More than ever, I admired her resolve and the grace with which she exerted it. In other words, she knows what? Ultimately, she's going to her death. Okay? But that's free will for you. I did not have that luxury in this world. She chooses to behave a certain way. Okay? So, They go off. She gets the staff, page 516. She says, you made a promise. He goes, oh, a promise. To let us go? She says, oh, yes. There might have been a time a year or two back when Nathaniel would have honored any agreement he had made. He'd have considered it beneath his dignity to break a vow, despite his enmity with the girl. And then he looks up at the red spheres. Knowing he's being watched, promises made to terrorists are scarcely obligatory, Ms. Jones. Our agreement is void. Notice, our agreement is void. What did he make Bartimaeus do just prior to this little conversation? If she tries to do anything to break the agreement, you have permission to kill her. Okay? Don't let her escape, etc. Okay? So Nathaniel just says, our agreement is void. That means the charge he gave to Bartimaeus, which was based upon the agreement, is also void. Okay? So she pulls out something to give to Nathaniel. She says it's a gift. It's his scrying glass. Have it back, she says. And as we watch the girl act it, she throws it. Her hands reach out, snared the foliot around its scrawny neck, jerking it backward off Jacob's shoulders. Kitty was relying on her resilience. Okay? And what happens? She starts to get away. The skeleton shows up because the skeleton has taken the form of the driver. And the skeleton starts, bouncing all around. And what else shows up? You knew it had to show up eventually. The golem, page 525. Kitty sees the dark. She notices the sun's gone black. And what happens? Nathaniel says what? Remember that golem? It's turned up. Somebody has decided to intervene. And then what's Nathaniel doing? He's sitting there trying to turn on Gladstone's staff. And Bartimaeus says, this isn't going to end well. Why? Because he's obviously not Gladstone. But 523, I've passed over this accidentally. He says to Kitty and Jacob, keep away from that cloud. I think it's dangerous. Well, what does he care? The vigilant spheres have seen everything. They've heard everything. So Devereaux, Duval, Whitwell, all the others have seen everything that's played out so far. They know Kitty Jones is guilty and all that. It doesn't matter if she were to die at the hands of the golem. So why is he saying, watch out for that cloud? I think it's dangerous. Is there just a little bit of common humanity left inside him? Like you care. Kitty sneers at him. Okay? So, to cut to the chase, how does she kill the golem? How did she know to do that? Bartimaeus told her. Notice, in what state is John Mandrake when she climbs on the golem's back? He's been knocked out by the staff. And what's the golem doing? Going towards him. And Bartimaeus is like, you can go now. I'm not under any charge to stop you. You're free to go. Okay? What are you doing? And she stops the golem. What does Nathaniel assume happened to her? She died. Part of the assumption is because Bartimaeus says the golem ate them, but he doesn't quite believe that. Okay? And then we see the golem go off and it fingers Duval. So he's been bad from the beginning. Right? But he's not the ultimate baddie. So when Bartimaeus leaves for the final time, okay, we see the little interview he has with Nathaniel, and Nathaniel explains how Duval finally confessed everything. He mentioned Hopkins and somebody else not known by name. So now we see Hopkins is the link between the two sides. All right? Page 554, Nathaniel, is getting a little uppity. And he says, I'm not going to have you criticizing my actions. He goes, actions, Bartimaeus, actions nothing. It's your morals I object to. Still less my morals. You're the demon, remember? Why should it matter to you? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. The fact that a humble commoner was more honorable than you'll ever be is hardly my affair. Now you have to imagine those words sting. Okay? So, they talk a little bit more. We find out how John has now risen in power. He's now in charge of internal affairs, and internal affairs have been taken away. That is totally removed from Jessica Whitwell's department. She's now in charge of security. Okay? He's got a nice house, beautiful furnishings. And how often do people come over and enjoy it with him? None. Why? He has no friends. So, page 556. Bartimaeus, Nathaniel says, are you ready? Yep. I performed a formal salute. I bid the magician John Mandrake farewell. May he live long and never summon me again. By the way, notice something there. What? Just as he's about to finish his incantation, or begin it. I didn't say Nathaniel. It's because I see you more as Mandrake now. The boy who was Nathaniel's fading. Almost gone. Good. I'm glad you see sense at last. Farewell, Bartimaeus. Farewell. I didn't have time to tell him he kind of missed the point. What's the point? What does he mean? Nathaniel's fading. He's becoming more selfish. What else? True. The magician is taking over from the 5-year-old commoner. He's losing his common humanity. He's losing his humanity. He's becoming a mere magician, a rote magician. Okay? In other words, he's kind of becoming like a human golem. It's just there's somebody else pulling the strings and peering through the eye. Okay? Nathaniel thinks he's in charge of his destiny. How much is he? Okay. All right, we'll stop there. And we'll try to do a whole bunch on Thursday.